The massive space station Nexus hovered silently against the backdrop of unfamiliar stars. A marvel of interstellar engineering, it served as the nexus point for a dozen alien civilizations. A neutral ground where species that might otherwise never meet could engage in diplomacy, trade, and cultural exchange, and occasionally combat. Xander Hayes stared out the viewport of the human delegation's quarters, watching as alien ships of various designs approached the docking bays. His reflection stared back at him. A young man of 25 with short brown hair, unremarkable features, and the standard-issue uniform of Earth's Interstellar Defense Force. His hands fidgeted nervously at his sides. Quite the view, isn't it? Xander turned to see Commander Eliza Warren approaching. She was the head of Earth's diplomatic delegation to the Interstellar Alliance, and she looked as uncomfortable in her formal attire as Xander felt in his presence here. "Yes, ma'am," Xander replied. "I've never seen so many different species in one place. And they're all here for the Galactic Combat Tournament," Warren said, her expression grim. "A barbaric tradition, if you ask me, but one we have to participate in if Earth wants to be taken seriously by the Alliance. The Galactic Combat Tournament was an ancient tradition among the older species of the Alliance. Every 5 years, each civilization would send their finest warriors to compete in hand-to-hand combat. It was supposedly a way to settle disputes without resorting to interstellar warfare. But Earth, being the newest member of the Alliance, saw it more as political theater than anything else. "Commander, with all due respect," Xander began hesitantly, "I'm still not sure why I'm here. I'm not a combat specialist. I'm just a security officer." Commander Warren's face softened slightly. "You're here because you scored in the top percentile in adaptive thinking during your training, Hayes, and because our actual champion caught a nasty case of Proxima flu and had to be quarantined back on Earth. So I'm the backup's backup," Xander muttered. "You're here because Earth needs representation," Warren corrected firmly. "Just watch the matches, learn the protocols, and stay out of trouble. Captain Lee will be handling the actual fighting." Xander nodded, somewhat relieved. Captain Maya Lee was Earth's most decorated hand-to-hand combat specialist, with more medals than Xander had years of life. If anyone from Earth stood a chance in this tournament, it was her. "The opening ceremony begins in 2 hours," Warren continued. "Get cleaned up and meet us in the main hall. And remember, we're here to observe and learn. Earth can't afford any incidents." With that, she left Xander alone with his thoughts in the vast star-filled void beyond the viewport. The grand arena at the heart of Nexus Station was a marvel of alien architecture, circular in design. It could seat over 10,000 beings of various sizes and physiologies. The combat area in the center was a perfect circle 50 meters in diameter. The floor made of a strange material that seemed to shift and adapt to the fighters' movements. Xander sat with the rest of the Earth delegation in their designated section, feeling distinctly out of place among the diverse crowd. Around them sat representatives from across the galaxy, the crystalline Aurelians, whose bodies refracted light in dazzling patterns, the massive four-armed Kronax, whose gray skin looked as tough as armor, the serpentine Slesians, who communicated through a complex language of hisses and movements, and dozens of other species Xander couldn't begin to identify. "Nervous?" Captain Lee asked, taking a seat beside him. She was a compact woman in her 40s, with close-cropped black hair and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen more combat than most soldiers twice her age. "A little," Xander admitted. "I've never seen anything like this." "Neither has most of humanity," Lee replied. "We're the new kids on the galactic block, remember? Most of these civilizations have been spacefaring for thousands of years." A hushed silence fell over the arena as the lights dimmed. A holographic display appeared in the center of the combat area, showing the emblem of the Interstellar Alliance, a stylized depiction of various star systems connected by lines of light. A booming voice echoed throughout the arena, simultaneously translated into dozens of languages through the neural translators all attendees had been provided upon arrival. Representatives of the Alliance, we welcome you to the 73rd Galactic Combat Tournament. May the strongest warriors bring honor to their civilizations, and may the bonds between our peoples be strengthened through honorable combat. The crowd erupted in a cacophony of cheers, roars, clicks, and other sounds of approval from various species. Xander found himself swept up in the excitement despite his reservations. The opening matches began shortly thereafter. Xander watched, fascinated and horrified, as warriors from different worlds demonstrated combat techniques unlike anything he had ever seen. A Kronaki fighter used all four of its powerful arms to grapple an opponent into submission. An Aurelian manipulated light itself to momentarily blind their adversary. A Sclesian moved with such fluid grace that they seemed to flow around attacks rather than dodge them. They're incredible, Xander whispered to Captain Lee. They've evolved on different worlds, with different gravities and environments. Lee replied, her eyes never leaving the combat area. Each species has their own advantages and fighting styles. It's my job to find their weaknesses. As the day progressed, Xander began to notice a pattern. The human delegation was largely ignored by the other species, occasionally receiving curious glances but little else. It was as if Earth was an afterthought, a curiosity rather than a genuine competitor. This changed when a new fighter entered the arena. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer under the arena lights. Her body was lean but powerfully muscled, and she moved with a predatory grace that reminded Xander of the big cats he had seen in documentaries. Her head was hairless, adorned instead with a series of ridges that ran from her forehead to the nape of her neck. Her eyes were entirely black, without visible pupils or irises. Yet somehow Xander could feel her gaze sweeping across the crowd. That's Zayla, Captain Lee said quietly. Champion of the Azuri. The Azuri were one of the oldest species in the Alliance, renowned for their physical prowess and warrior culture. They had been spacefaring when humans were still learning to use stone tools. Xyla's opponent was a burly Kronak, nearly twice her mass. The fight was brutally short. The Kronak charged forward, all 4 arms reaching to grapple, but Xyla moved like liquid, flowing around the attack before delivering a precise strike to a point just below the Kronak's throat. The massive alien stumbled, gasped, and collapsed. The crowd erupted in cheers as medical drones quickly moved in to attend to the fallen Kronak. Xyla stood in the center of the arena, not even breathing hard, her black eyes scanning the crowd until they settled on the human delegation. A cold smile spread across her face, revealing teeth that seemed just a little too sharp. That's not good, Captain Lee muttered. Before Xander could ask what she meant, Zayla's amplified voice echoed through the arena. Is that the best the Alliance can offer? She called out, her voice carrying a musical quality despite its mocking tone. The Kronak are strong, yes, but predictable. I seek a worthy challenge. Her gaze fixed directly on the human delegation. Perhaps the newcomers would like to demonstrate their worth, though I doubt these Earth males have the strength to last more than a few moments against a true warrior. A murmur ran through the crowd. This was a direct challenge, a break from the tournament's carefully planned schedule. Commander Warren leaned forward, her face tight with concern. She's baiting us. This isn't part of the protocol. It's a cultural challenge, Captain Lee replied quietly. The Azuri respect strength above all else. If we refuse, then it will be seen as weakness. Then accept it, Warren ordered. Show them what humans are capable of. Lee nodded and stood, but before she could step forward, Zayla's voice rang out again. "No, not the female," she said, her smile widening. "Earth sends a woman to fight for them because their males are too weak. I challenge any male from the Earth delegation to face me in honorable combat." The arena fell silent. All eyes turned to the human section. "This is a deliberate insult," Warren hissed. "She's trying to force us into a no-win situation." Xander felt his heart pounding in his chest. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. He was just here as a backup, an observer. But the tension in the air was palpable, and he could feel the weight of 1,000 alien gazes upon them. Captain Lee turned to Warren. "Commander, this is bad. The Azuri are influential in the Alliance. If we refuse this challenge..." Warren's face hardened. "We can't afford to lose face, not when we're still trying to establish our position." She scanned the male members of the delegation, mostly diplomats and scientists, not soldiers. None of them had combat training. None except... Her eyes landed on Xander. "Hayes," she said quietly. "You have basic combat training." Xander felt his mouth go dry. "Commander, with all due respect, I'm a security officer. I'm trained to handle rowdy diplomats, not fight alien warriors." "We don't have a choice," Warren replied. "It's either you or we refuse the challenge and lose whatever respect we might have gained in the Alliance." Before Xander could protest further, Captain Lee placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to win," she said softly. "Just don't embarrass us. Show them that humans have courage, if nothing else." Xander looked around at his fellow humans, saw the mixture of hope and resignation in their eyes, and knew he had no choice. Slowly, he stood. The crowd's murmur grew louder as Xander made his way down to the combat area. He could hear snippets of conversation from the aliens around him, most of it dismissive. "The human will be destroyed," someone said. "This will be quick," said another. As he stepped onto the combat floor, Xander felt the strange material shift slightly beneath his feet, adapting to his weight and stance. Across from him, Zayla looked even more imposing up close, her blue skin rippling with muscles that seemed almost too perfectly designed. "So, Earth sends a child to fight its battles," Zayla said, her voice carrying just enough for those nearby to hear. "How disappointing." Xander said nothing, trying to recall his combat training. Basic stances, defensive positions, anything that might keep him alive for more than a few seconds. A tournament official, a small hovering drone, approached them. "This match is unofficial and will not affect tournament standings," it announced in a mechanical voice. "Standard combat rules apply. No weapons, no lethal strikes. Victory by submission or incapacitation." "Agreed," Zayla said, never taking her eyes off Xander. The drone turned to Xander expectantly. He swallowed hard. "Agreed." "Combat begins at the signal." The drone retreated, leaving Xander alone with the alien warrior who had just effortlessly defeated an opponent twice her size. He took a deep breath, centering himself as best he could. A high-pitched tone sounded throughout the arena. Zayla moved with frightening speed, closing the distance between them in a heartbeat. Xander barely had time to raise his arms in a defensive posture before her first strike hit, a palm thrust that caught him in the chest and sent him staggering backward. The impact was like being hit by a car. Xander gasped as the air was forced from his lungs, his vision blurring momentarily. Only his training kept him on his feet, his body automatically shifting to maintain balance. "Is this all humans have to offer?" Zayla taunted, circling him slowly. "Pathetic." Xander tried to focus, to think through the pain. She was faster than him, stronger than him, and clearly more experienced. A direct confrontation would end exactly as everyone expected, with him unconscious or worse. He needed a different approach. Zyla attacked again, a sweeping kick aimed at his legs. Xander jumped back, barely avoiding it, but she had anticipated this and followed through with a punch to his midsection that connected solidly. He doubled over, struggling to breathe. "The males of your species are even weaker than I imagined," Zyla said loudly, playing to the crowd. "Perhaps Earth should have sent their females instead. They at least might have provided some challenge." Through the pain, Xander noticed something. Zyla was playing to the crowd, her attacks deliberately flashy, designed to humiliate rather than quickly defeat. She was toying with him. That gave him an idea. As Zyla approached for another attack, Xander feigned greater weakness than he felt, stumbling slightly, his guard dropping. It wasn't hard to look hurt. He was hurt, but he exaggerated his vulnerability. Zyla took the bait, moving in with slightly less caution, preparing a strike that would likely knock him unconscious and end the match. But as she committed to the attack, Xander suddenly dropped to the floor and swept his leg in a low, spinning kick, not at her legs, where she would expect it, but at the combat floor itself. The adaptive material of the floor responded to the impact, rippling outward in a wave that momentarily disrupted Zyla's footing. It wasn't much, just a slight imbalance, but it was enough. As she adjusted her stance, Xander launched himself forward, not with a punch or kick, but with his shoulder, driving into her midsection with all his weight and momentum. The move was unexpected, not a trained combat technique, but something more akin to a desperate tackle. Zyla, prepared for conventional strikes, was caught off guard. Her balance already compromised by the rippling floor, she toppled backward, Xander's weight driving her down. They hit the floor hard, Xander on top, acting purely on instinct and adrenaline. He quickly shifted position, applying a simple submission hold he had learned in basic training. A joint lock on her arm that, in humans at least, caused intense pain without permanent damage. For a moment, there was complete silence in the arena. Then Zyla let out a sound, not of pain, but of surprise. With a surge of strength, she broke free of the hold and shoved Xander off, sending him rolling across the floor. But as they both rose to their feet, the dynamic had changed. Zyla's expression was no longer one of contempt, but of wary reassessment. "Perhaps there is more to humans than appearances suggest," she said, her voice lower now, meant only for him. The fight resumed, but with a different tenor. Zyla was no longer playing to the crowd, but fighting with focused intent. Her strikes were faster, more precise, and Xander found himself purely on the defensive, using every bit of his training just to avoid the most punishing blows. Even so, he took hit after hit, each one wearing him down further. His ribs ached, his vision occasionally blurred, and he knew he couldn't last much longer. But with each exchange, he was learning, observing Zyla's patterns, the way she moved, the rhythm of her attacks. And he noticed something else. Despite her superior strength and speed, there was a predictability to her fighting style. It was highly trained, almost ritualistic, as if combat for the Azuri was as much a dance as it was a contest of strength. That gave Xander his second insight, as Zyla launched another combination of strikes. Xander didn't try to block or evade in any trained manner. Instead, he moved chaotically, without pattern or form, sacrificing proper technique for unpredictability. He took a painful hit to his shoulder to create an opening, then countered not with a proper strike but with a crude, untrained shove that caught Zyla by surprise. The alien warrior frowned, momentarily confused by the lack of structure in Xander's movements. That brief hesitation was all he needed. Xander surged forward, using a grappling technique that Captain Lee had once demonstrated. A simple but effective method to unbalance a stronger opponent. But at the last moment, he changed the technique, incorporating a movement he had seen the Slesian fighter use earlier. The hybrid move caught Zayla completely off guard. She tried to counter, but her trained responses weren't calibrated for this unconventional approach. In a move that seemed to defy the laws of physics, Xander managed to redirect Zayla's own momentum against her, sending her stumbling forward. As she struggled to regain her balance, Xander executed the one perfect strike of the entire match. A precisely targeted blow to a point just behind her knee, a universal weak point in bipedal species. Xyla's leg buckled. For the first time in the match, perhaps for the first time in years, the champion of the Azzurri fell to one knee. The arena erupted in a mixture of gasps and cheers. Xander stood, breathing heavily, his body a constellation of pain points, watching as Xyla remained on one knee for a long moment. When she looked up at him, her expression was unreadable. Slowly, deliberately, she placed her palm on the floor in the universal gesture of submission. The match was over. Xander had won. The aftermath was a blur. Medical drones escorted him back to the human quarters, treating his numerous injuries, bruised ribs, a mild concussion, various contusions. Captain Lee and Commander Warren debriefed him, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and cautious pride. "You did the impossible, Hayes," Warren said, shaking her head. "The Alliance representatives are looking at Earth very differently now." "It was luck," Xander insisted, wincing as a medical drone applied a regenerative patch to his ribs. "And desperation." "It was adaptability," Captain Lee corrected. "You observed, you learned, and you improvised. That's humanity's greatest strength." News of the match spread quickly throughout Nexus Station. When Xander ventured out of the human quarters the next day, still sore but mostly healed thanks to advanced medical technology, he found himself the subject of curious stares and occasional nods of respect from aliens who had previously ignored him completely. The tournament continued, with Captain Lee now representing Earth in the official matches. She performed admirably, though she didn't advance to the final rounds. But the Earth delegation was no longer treated as an afterthought. Representatives from various species sought them out, curious about human combat techniques and culture. It was 3 days after the match when Xander encountered Xyla again. He was in one of the station's observation lounges, a vast space with transparent walls that offered spectacular views of the surrounding stars. The lounge was mostly empty at this hour, the majority of station residents attending the tournament semifinals. Xyla approached silently, her movements as fluid as ever. She wore formal attire rather than combat gear, the elegant lines of her clothing emphasizing her alien physiology. "Xander Hayes," she said by way of greeting, using his name for the first time. Xander turned, trying to hide his surprise. "Champion Xayla. May I join you?" He nodded, gesturing to the empty space beside him at the viewport. They stood in silence for a moment, watching as a small fleet of Aurelian ships performed intricate maneuvers in the distance, their crystalline hulls catching the light of nearby stars. "You fought unexpectedly," Xayla said finally. "I fought to survive," Xander replied honestly. "You would have destroyed me in a fair fight." Xyla's head tilted slightly. "And that is what I have been contemplating. In Azzurri culture, combat is ritualized, perfected through thousands of years of tradition. We train in specific forms, specific techniques, passed down through generations. On Earth, we adapt," Xander said. "We have thousands of different fighting styles, constantly evolving, borrowing from each other, no single perfect form, just endless variation and innovation." "Like your tactics in our match," Xayla observed. "You combined techniques from different species, created something new in the moment." Xander shrugged. "I just used what worked." "That," Zayla said, was a kind of strength I had not considered. She turned to face him fully. I came to offer you something, Xander Hayes, an exchange of knowledge. What kind of exchange? I will teach you Azuri combat techniques, she said. And in return, you will teach me this adaptability. This human way of thinking that allows you to create new forms from old ones. Xander was stunned. You want to learn from me after I got lucky in one match? Zyla's expression hardened slightly. Do not mistake my offer for weakness. I could defeat you 9 times out of 10 in combat. But that one time, that possibility of innovation, that is what interests me. The Azuri have been fighting the same way for millennia. Perhaps it is time for us to evolve. Before Xander could respond, his communication device chimed. It was Commander Warren, requesting his immediate presence at a diplomatic meeting. Apparently, his unexpected victory had made him a valuable addition to Earth's negotiating team. I have to go, he said apologetically. Zyla nodded. Consider my offer. We will speak again. As Xander turned to leave, she added, And Xander Hayes, you may have won by what you call luck, but in my experience, luck favors the prepared mind. You saw an opportunity where others would have seen only defeat. That, too, is strength. Over the next week, as the tournament progressed toward its conclusion, Xander found himself increasingly involved in diplomatic matters. His unique status as the human who defeated Zyla opened doors that had previously been closed to Earth's representatives. But more intriguing were his daily training sessions with Zayla herself, true to her word. She began teaching him the formalized combat techniques of the Azuri, movements of extraordinary precision and power, developed over thousands of years of martial tradition. In return, Xander introduced her to the concept of mixed martial arts, the idea of borrowing and combining techniques from different fighting styles. Their sessions often drew observers from various species, curious about this unusual cultural exchange. And gradually Xander began to understand the larger significance of what had happened. The Azuri have always believed in the supremacy of physical strength. Zayla explained during one session, as they took a break from training. It is the foundation of our culture, our social hierarchy, even our approach to diplomacy. And now, Xander asked, sipping a rehydration fluid that tasted faintly of berries. Now, I begin to see that there are different kinds of strength, she replied. The strength to adapt, to change, to incorporate new ideas. These are not weaknesses as my people have long believed. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Talon, a veteran Earth soldier who had been assigned as Xander's official trainer after his unexpected victory. A grizzled man in his 50s with a scarred face and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen too much combat. Talon had quickly become a valuable mentor to Xander. Sorry to interrupt, Talon said, nodding respectfully to Zayla. But the commander wants you both at the diplomatic hall. Something about a joint demonstration for the Alliance Council. The diplomatic hall was the largest gathering space on Nexus Station, capable of accommodating representatives from all member species of the Alliance. Today, it was filled to capacity, with holographic displays allowing those who couldn't physically attend to observe the proceedings. Commander Warren met them at the entrance, her expression serious but with an undercurrent of excitement. Hey, Hayes, Zayla, she greeted them. The Alliance Council has requested a demonstration of your collaborative training methods. Apparently, word has spread. Xander glanced at Zayla, who seemed unsurprised. What exactly do they want to see? They want to see Earth and Azuri combat techniques combined, Warren explained. It's symbolic, representing the potential for cultural exchange between established Alliance members and newcomers like Earth. Political theater, Talon muttered under his breath. Important political theater, Warren corrected sharply. This could significantly advance Earth's standing in the Alliance. Zyla inclined her head slightly. The Azuri High Command has also expressed interest in this exchange. They believe it may have broader applications. The implication was clear. What had begun as a personal challenge had evolved into something with diplomatic and possibly military significance. As they entered the diplomatic hall, Xander was struck by the diversity of the gathered representatives, dozens of species, some humanoid, others wildly alien in form, all watching with varying degrees of interest as he and Zayla took their positions in the central area. We will demonstrate the integration of Earth's adaptive combat philosophy with traditional Azuri techniques, Zayla announced, her voice carrying effortlessly through the vast space. What you will see is not the weakness of compromise, but the strength of evolution. What followed was a carefully choreographed demonstration, part combat exercise, part dance. Zyla performed a series of traditional Azuri combat forms, movements of extraordinary grace and power. Then Xander demonstrated how these could be modified, combined with techniques from various Earth martial arts to create new, hybrid forms. Finally, they engaged in a controlled sparring match, each using the integrated style they had been developing together. The result was something neither purely human nor purely Azuri, but something new, fluid yet powerful, traditional yet innovative. When they finished, there was a moment of silence. Then a wave of approval spread through the gathered representatives, not the raucous cheering of the combat arena, but something more measured, the acknowledgement of something significant. As they left the diplomatic hall, Captain Lee fell into step beside them. "Impressive display," she said. "You've got the entire Alliance talking." "About what?" Xander asked. "About the possibility that different species might have something to learn from each other." Lee replied, "Not just technology or resources, but ways of thinking, of fighting, of living." "That is not a comfortable idea for many," Zayla observed. "Especially for older civilizations like the Azuri, who have long believed in the superiority of their traditions." "A change never is comfortable," Talon said, joining the conversation. "But it's necessary for survival. Any species that stops adapting eventually dies out." Zyla was quiet for a moment, then said, "Perhaps that is the true strength of humanity. Not your physical capabilities, but your willingness, your eagerness to change, to incorporate new ideas, to evolve." "We've had to," Xander said. "Earth's history is full of different cultures meeting, clashing, then eventually learning from each other. It's messy and often painful, but it's how we've survived." As they reached a junction in the station's corridors, Zayla stopped. "I must report to the Azuri delegation, but before I go, I would ask you something." "Xander Hayes." "What is it?" "When we fought, when you defeated me with that single strike," she said, her black eyes intent on his. "Was it planned? Did you anticipate how the combat floor would react? How I would respond?" Xander considered lying, then decided against it. "No," he admitted, "I was desperate. I saw an opportunity and took it without knowing if it would work." Zyla's expression was unreadable for a moment. Then she nodded. "That is what I thought. And that is what I find most fascinating about humans. You embrace uncertainty in a way the Azuri have forgotten how to do." With that, she turned and walked away, her tall figure soon lost among the diverse crowd of station residents. "Hey, she likes you," Captain Lee said with a slight smile. Xander felt his face warm. "It's not like that. It's a professional relationship. Professional, cultural, personal. The lines get blurry out here in space." Lee replied, Just be careful. Interspecies relationships are complicated even when they're just diplomatic. Speaking from experience, Captain. Lee's smile turned enigmatic. Let's just say I've learned a few things during my time with the Alliance that weren't in any training manual. The final day of the tournament arrived with great fanfare. The arena was filled beyond capacity, with additional viewers watching via holographic displays throughout the station. The championship match was between a Kronak warrior and an Aurelian light manipulator, both undefeated in their previous bouts. Xander sat with the Earth delegation, now positioned in a more prominent section than when the tournament began. Beside him were Captain Lee and Talon, with Commander Warren seated in the diplomatic section nearby. Quite a change from a week ago. Talon observed. Back then, most of these aliens wouldn't even make eye contact with humans. Now they're falling over themselves to talk about cultural exchange initiatives. Amazing what beating someone in a fight can do for diplomatic relations, Lee said dryly. The championship match was spectacular, a display of extraordinary combat skills from both competitors. The Kronak's raw power against the Aurelians' dazzling light manipulations made for a visual spectacle unlike anything Xander had ever seen. In the end, the Aurelian emerged victorious, using their control of light to create momentary blindness before delivering a precise strike to the Kronak's vulnerable points. As the new champion was celebrated, Xander noticed Zayla entering the human section, drawing curious glances from those around them. The Alliance Council wishes to speak with both of us after the closing ceremony, she said without preamble, taking a seat beside him. About what? Xander asked, surprised. About formalizing the combat exchange program we have started. Zayla replied. There is interest in expanding it to include other species, other techniques. That's not what I expected when I got assigned to this mission, Xander admitted. Zyla's expression softened slightly. Life rarely follows the paths we expect. Xander Hayes. A week ago, I believed human males were inherently weak. Now I find myself learning from one, and my people are reassessing centuries of assumptions based on a single match. All because of one lucky move, Xander said, still not entirely comfortable with his newfound status. No, Zayla corrected firmly. Not because of luck, but because of what that move represented. The willingness to try something new, to risk failure for the possibility of success. That is a form of courage my people had forgotten. The closing ceremony was brief but impressive, with representatives from each species offering traditional displays of their culture. When it came time for Earth's contribution, Captain Lee performed a demonstration of several Earth martial arts, seamlessly transitioning between styles in a way that emphasized humanity's adaptive approach to combat. Afterward, as the arena slowly emptied, Xander and Zayla were escorted to the Alliance Council chambers, a circular room with seating arranged to accommodate the diverse physiologies of council members. The 12 permanent members of the council, representing the oldest and most influential civilizations in the Alliance, sat in an inner circle, while representatives from newer member species occupied an outer ring. The High Counselor, a tall, ethereal being from a species known as the Elcry, addressed them directly. Zayla of the Azuri, Xander Hayes of Earth. Your impromptu match and subsequent collaboration has sparked considerable interest among Alliance members, the counselor said, their voice melodious despite the neural translation. What began as a challenge has evolved into an opportunity for greater understanding between our peoples. A representative from the Kronak hegemony leaned forward, their massive form dwarfing those around them. The Kronaks have long respected Azuri combat traditions. If the Azuri find value in human techniques, perhaps we too should examine them more closely. The question, said another council member, a Slesian whose scales shifted color as they spoke. is whether this exchange can extend beyond combat to other areas of cultural and scientific significance. Commander Warren stepped forward from the Earth delegation. Earth has always valued the exchange of ideas. We believe that diversity of thought leads to innovation and progress. As do we, said the Azuri representative, an older female whose blue skin had faded to a pale cyan with age. Though it has been many generations since the Azuri actively sought new combat techniques from other species, the discussion continued for hours, with representatives from various species offering perspectives and proposals. Throughout it all, Xander remained mostly silent, still somewhat overwhelmed by the diplomatic significance being attached to what he had viewed as a desperate fight for survival. Finally, the High Counselor raised a hand for silence. It is the decision of this council that a formal exchange program be established, with the initial focus on combat techniques but with the potential to expand to other cultural and scientific domains. Zayla of the Azuri and Xander Hayes of Earth will serve as the founding representatives of this program. Zayla inclined her head in formal acceptance. Xander, following her lead, did the same. Furthermore, the counselor continued, in recognition of Earth's unique perspective as a newly spacefaring civilization, we extend an invitation for Earth to establish a permanent cultural mission on Nexus Station, separate from their diplomatic representation. Commander Warren couldn't quite hide her surprise and satisfaction at this announcement. A permanent cultural mission was a significant step up in Earth's alliance status, offering opportunities for influence and information gathering that would be invaluable to humanity's position in interstellar politics. As the council session concluded, Xander found himself surrounded by well-wishers and curious representatives from various species. Captain Lee managed to extract him from the crowd, leading him to a quieter corridor. "Congratulations, Hayes," she said with genuine warmth. "You've accomplished more for Earth Alliance relations in 1 week than our diplomats have managed in 5 years. By getting beaten up by an alien warrior," Xander said, still finding the situation somewhat surreal. "By showing that humanity has something valuable to offer," Lee corrected. "Our adaptability, our willingness to learn and change, these are strengths that some of these older civilizations have lost over millennia of tradition and stability." Before Xander could respond, Zayla approached them, having similarly extracted herself from the post-council gathering. "The Azuri High Command has officially endorsed my participation in the exchange program," she said, "and they have expressed interest in having you visit Azuri Prime as part of the cultural exchange." Xander blinked in surprise. "Me? Visit the Azuri homeworld?" "You would be the first human to do so," Zayla confirmed. "It is a significant honor." "And a significant opportunity for Earth," Captain Lee added meaningfully. Xander looked between them, suddenly understanding the gravity of what was being offered. This wasn't just about combat techniques anymore. It was about opening doors for humanity in the wider galactic community. "I would be honored," he said finally. Xyla's expression softened into what might have been a smile. "Good. I have much to show you about my world, as you have shown me about yours." As they walked together toward the main concourse of the station, Xander reflected on the strange path that had led him here. A week ago, he had been a nobody, a backup security officer sent to observe a tournament he didn't understand. Now he was at the center of a new interspecies initiative, about to become the first human to visit the homeworld of one of the Alliance's most powerful civilizations, all because he had refused to give up in a fight he couldn't win. "You are thinking deeply," Zayla observed as they walked. "I just processing everything that's happened," Xander admitted. "A week ago, you thought all human males were weak. And now?" Xander met her gaze. "And now?" Xyla was quiet for a moment, then said, Now I understand that strength takes many forms. Physical power is but one. The strength to adapt, to change, to see opportunity where others see only defeat. These too are forms of power, perhaps even greater ones. They reached the vast central atrium of Nexus Station, where beings from dozens of worlds mingled freely. Above them, through the transparent dome, countless stars shone against the velvet darkness of space, a reminder of the vastness that humanity was just beginning to explore. We have much to learn from each other. Xander Hayes, Zayla said, gazing upward at the stars. Your people and mine. And perhaps that mutual learning is the greatest strength of all. Xander nodded, looking out at the diverse gathering of species around them. Some allies, some rivals, all part of a complex interstellar community that humanity was only beginning to understand. I think you're right, he said, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this exchange takes us. Zayla's black eyes seemed to reflect the starlight as she turned to him. As am I, Xander Hayes of Earth, as am I. In the days that followed, as preparations began for the newly established exchange program and for Xander's historic visit to Azuri Prime, news of the unlikely partnership between the human and the Azuri warrior spread throughout the Alliance. It became a symbol of the potential for cooperation between old and new, between tradition and innovation. And on Earth, when the reports reached the human homeworld, the story quickly captured the public imagination. How an ordinary soldier had faced an alien champion who mocked human weakness, and with a single desperate move, had opened a new chapter in humanity's journey among the stars. But for Xander, it was simpler than that. He hadn't fought for politics or diplomacy or even for Earth's reputation. He had fought to survive, to adapt, to find a way forward when all odds were against him. And in doing so, he had demonstrated the very essence of what it meant to be human. The will to persist, to learn, to grow, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. A strength not of muscle or bone, but of mind and spirit. A strength that even the mighty Azuri, for all their physical prowess, had come to respect. It was, Xander reflected as he gazed out at the stars from the viewport of his quarters. Perhaps the greatest lesson of all, that true strength comes in many forms, and the greatest victories often arise from the most unexpected places. Somewhere out there, among those countless points of light, lay Azuri Prime and whatever future awaited him there. A future born from a single moment of desperate innovation, from a human beating an alien warrior with one unexpected move, a future of possibilities he was only beginning to imagine.